Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. My wife Jessica and I had been married for 4 years. We weren't newlyweds anymore, but I thought we had already gone through the tough parts, getting used to each other, making compromises. There was a time when Jessica would smile as soon as I walked into the room. We used to stay up late, talking about anything and everything. But now our conversations were short and unimportant. She wasn't angry. We didn't argue. But it was worse than that. She just didn't seem to care anymore. For the last few months she had been going out with her friends every Friday night. At first I didn't mind. She worked hard and deserved to have fun. But the more I thought about it, the more something bothered me. I didn't really like her friends. 2 were in a polygamous relationship, and the other 2 were divorced. I tried to push my worries aside, telling myself that just because their lives were messy, it didn't mean Jessica would make the same mistakes. I wanted to believe everything was fine, but no matter how much I tried to ignore it, something felt off. One Friday night she left the house around 8 p.m., wearing a tight red dress I hadn't seen in years. The sight of her in it made my stomach tighten, not in admiration but in unease. Jessica used to dress like that for me, back when things were good, back when she actually cared about what I thought. But lately she barely acknowledged me. I had chalked it up to stress, but the nagging feeling in my gut told me otherwise. "You look nice," I said, forcing a small smile. She barely spared me a glance. "Thanks," she replied flatly, grabbing her purse and heading for the door. I watched her go, feeling the sting of indifference settle in my chest. It wasn't just tonight. It had been like this for months. No matter what I did, it was never enough. When I brought her flowers, she forced a smile and muttered, "That's nice." When I offered to take her to dinner, she would decline, saying she was too tired. Movie night? That was even more pointless. She would tell me I was only doing these things because she asked me to. But I was simply trying to bring us back to what we used to be. I worked so hard every day, trying to build the life she always talked about. The vacations, the dream house, the financial security. I thought I was doing the right thing, but somehow I was always the bad guy. I told myself not to overthink it. She would be back soon. I turned on the TV, flipping through channels without really watching. My phone sat in my hands, but I wasn't paying attention to the screen. Every few minutes I glanced at the clock. Midnight. She was always home by now, but for some reason she hadn't come home yet. By 1 a.m. I sent her a text. "Everything okay?" No response. By 2 a.m. I tried calling her instead. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I continued calling her, but there was no response. I wasn't just worried at that point. I was angry. Where the hell was she? It was almost 6 a.m. when I finally heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. I stayed on the couch, the TV muted, pretending to scroll through my phone. The door creaked open and Jessica walked in, wearing different clothes. The red dress was gone. Instead, she wore a loose black tank top and leggings, clothes that weren't hers. Her makeup was smudged. Her hair was a tangled mess. And then, there was the smell. A mix of sweat, perfume, alcohol, and something else. Something unmistakable. Musk. She ran a shaky hand through her hair and forced a casual smile. "Hey." I stared at her, trying to keep my voice steady. "You changed clothes?" She blinked, then looked down at herself as if just realizing. "Oh, yeah. I spilled a drink on my dress." She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then turned away too quickly, setting her purse down on the counter. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. She was lying. She busied herself digging through her bag as if looking for something. Then, as if suddenly remembering the time, she let out a dramatic yawn. "I'm exhausted. I'm gonna shower and crash." She turned toward the bedroom, but I wasn't done. "Jessica." She froze. Slowly, she turned back around. "What?" She stood in front of me, her expression flickering between defiance and something else. Something like guilt, but not quite. Maybe regret. Maybe shame. I took a slow step forward, my voice low and controlled. "Why didn't you text me, or call to let me know you'd be late, that you'd be out the whole night?" Jessica stiffened, her shoulders going rigid. "It was girls' night, Paul. Do I need to check in with you every 5 minutes?" I let out a humorless laugh. "It's called common courtesy and respect, Jessica." My voice rose slightly. I've been sitting here all night wondering if something happened to you. I stood up, no longer pretending to be calm. Plus, you left here in one outfit and came back in another. And you reek of... I trailed off, disgust curling in my gut. I didn't even want to say it. Her face flushed, but she quickly covered it with a mask of arrogance, then anger. Are you accusing me of something? She snapped. Because if you are, just say it. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. Fine, I said, my voice sharp as a knife. Did you sleep with someone else tonight? Jessica's eyes locked onto mine, and for a second, something flickered in them. But then, she glanced away. That hesitation lasted only a second, just long enough to confirm what I already knew. She scoffed, shaking her head. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Your trust in me is so low that you immediately jump to that conclusion? Jessica, don't. My voice was hoarse. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, reality twisting into something I didn't want to accept. Just tell me the truth. Don't make this worse. Silence. Her eyes darted around the room. She was barely holding herself together. Then finally she whispered, It was just one time. It didn't mean anything. My body went still. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. The blood rushed to my ears and my chest tightened. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. What? She didn't answer. She just stared at the floor, too afraid to look at me. I took a step back, dragging a hand over my mouth, my mind struggling to catch up. What the hell brought this on? My voice came out in a strangled whisper. Why did you do this? Nothing. No answer. No excuse. Just silence. I exhaled sharply, pacing, trying to stop the anger from boiling over. I was on the verge of losing control, of shouting, of throwing something, but I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I turned to look at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Say something, I demanded. She finally lifted her head. I was lonely, she muttered. I let out a bitter laugh. Lonely? I repeated. I needed something. I needed to feel wanted. I stared at her like I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you went and found someone else? Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. She could cry all she wanted. She wasn't the victim here. You could have talked to me, Jessica. You could have said something. My voice shook with frustration. But instead I cut myself off, shaking my head. You chose this. That was it. I didn't care anymore. This ruined everything. I let out a slow breath and ran a hand down my face. You know what? It doesn't matter. Jessica flinched like she already knew what was coming. I can't do this anymore, I said. My voice was hollow now, empty. We're done. I want a divorce. That statement seemed to break her. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. Wait, please. No, I interrupted, my voice firm. There's nothing left to wait for. She took a shaky step closer. I wasn't thinking straight. It was a mistake, I swear. I never meant for it to go this far. I exhaled sharply, my patience running thin. Then why did you do it? She hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, The girls told me it would teach you a lesson. I stared at her, my stomach twisting. What? They said you'd start appreciating me more if you thought you could lose me. That maybe you'd finally pay attention. Her voice was shaking now. I thought I was doing it to save us. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. And you believed them? Well, you definitely got my attention now, just not in the way you thought. She looked at me desperately, tears spilling onto her cheeks. Paul, I love you. She stepped forward, reaching for me, but I jerked away. Don't, I warned, my voice sharp. Don't touch me. Jessica sobbed openly now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sadness, just anger and disappointment. I turned away from her and grabbed my jacket. Where are you going? She asked frantically. Anywhere but here. Please don't leave like this, we can fix this, she begged. I grabbed my keys and met her tearful gaze. No, Jessica, I'm done. Then I walked out the door, got into my car, and drove away, leaving her standing on the porch, crying in the darkness. The moment I left, I knew there was no turning back. Jessica had broken something between us that could never be repaired. Her words kept replaying in my head as I drove aimlessly, trying to make sense of it all. They told me it would teach you a lesson. She hadn't just cheated, she had planned it. Deliberately, with the encouragement of her so-called friends. And what was the lesson? That I should grovel at her feet? That I should beg for her attention? That I should appreciate her more? I had worked my butt off trying to make her happy. I had sacrificed time, energy, and effort to build a life with her. And this was how she repaid me? The anger simmered beneath my skin like a slow-burning fire. I didn't want to go home. So I drove to a hotel, checked in, and locked the door behind me. I collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, my mind still trying to process everything. It didn't feel real, but exhaustion weighed me down, and eventually, sleep took over. I woke up to sunlight slipping through the curtains. My body ached from the tension of the night before. For a few seconds I forgot. Then it all came crashing back. I sat up and rubbed my face, exhaling slowly. I needed to talk to someone, so I called my best friend, Christopher, and told him to meet me at a cafe. "Damn, man, you don't look too good." I let out a humorless chuckle and sat down. "Yeah, I know." He didn't push, just waited. So I told him everything. By the time I finished, his hands were clenched around his mug. "Jessica did that? What is wrong with her?" I shook my head. "I don't even care anymore. I just want out." Christopher leaned back, exhaling sharply. "I know a guy, a damn good divorce lawyer. He helped my coworker when his wife tried to screw him over." He pulled out his phone, tapped a few things, then slid it across the table toward me. "Call him. He'll take care of you." I stared at the name on the screen. Divorce lawyer. I nodded and saved the contact. "Thanks, man." Christopher gave me a firm nod. "Anytime." The next morning I called the lawyer Christopher had recommended. By the afternoon I was already in his office starting the divorce process. When Jessica got served with the papers, she was relentless, sending texts, leaving voicemails, even showing up at my job like some kind of desperate, remorseful wife trying to win me back. I ignored her. At first it was, "Paul, please talk to me." Then it turned into, "I made a mistake. I'll do anything to fix this." And when I refused to respond, her desperation twisted into blame. "You were never there for me anyway. Maybe if you had been a better husband, this wouldn't have happened." That one made me laugh. Classic. First, she apologized. Then, when she realized I wasn't falling for her lies, she tried to make it my fault. That told me everything I needed to know. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing things. Mutual friends told me Jessica had completely fallen apart. She had confided in people about how her so-called friends had pushed her into it, how they convinced her I was neglecting her. The funniest part? Those same friends abandoned her the moment things went south. The divorced ones? The ones who cheered her on, saying, "Men always take their wives for granted until they think they're losing them." They stopped answering her calls. And the ones in a polygamous relationship? They started talking behind her back, calling her an idiot for throwing away a good marriage over some random fling. Jessica had ruined her own life for the entertainment of people who didn't even care about her. People warned me that I'd regret it. One day you'll wake up and wish you had given her another chance. That never happened. If anything, I felt lighter, freer. Because at the end of the day, I learned one simple truth. Some betrayals cut too deep to ever be forgiven. And Jessica had lost the one person who would have never betrayed her. Thank you for watching.